Dr. Kong Minho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped out of the transport ship. The dead planet stretched before him like a gray wasteland. No wind, no sound, nothing alive for millions of years. But his scanners were going crazy with readings from deep underground. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered Park Sola, his research assistant. She pulled her equipment pack tighter and followed him toward the dig site. "Keep focused," said Professor Lee Junho, their team leader. "The Confederation didn't send us halfway across the galaxy for sightseeing." The three humans were part of a joint archaeological team with aliens from 5 different species. The Zephyrians had found this world first, their crystal bodies perfect for detecting ancient energy sources. But they needed human help to understand what they had discovered. Kong Minho activated his ground scanner and pointed it at the barren soil. "There's definitely something massive down there. The energy readings are off the charts." They had been digging for 3 days when they finally broke through. The tunnel led straight down into darkness that seemed to swallow their lights. Lee Junho was the first to climb down the rope ladder, his boots echoing in the vast space below. "By all the stars," he whispered. The chamber was enormous, bigger than any building on Earth. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Strange symbols covered every surface, flowing in patterns that hurt to look at for too long. But what made everyone stop and stare was the technology. Machines lined the walls, still humming with power after who knew how many years. Control panels with buttons that pulsed in rhythm. Screens that showed star maps of galaxies they had never seen before. Everything looked impossibly advanced, yet somehow familiar. Park Sola ran her scanner over one of the wall panels. "Professor, this metal doesn't match anything in our databases. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." "But look at this," Kong Minho called from across the room. He was standing next to what looked like a command chair, perfectly sized for someone exactly his height. This wasn't built for Zephyrians or any other alien species. This was built for humans. Lee Junho felt a chill run down his spine. That's impossible. Humans only reached the stars 50 years ago. This place is ancient. The Zephyrian team leader, a tall crystal being named Veltar, floated over to them. "Our dating methods show these ruins are at least 5 million years old, but there's something else you need to see." Veltar led them deeper into the complex. Room after room stretched out before them, all filled with the same impossible technology. Libraries with crystal data storage systems that were still active. Workshops with tools that seemed to bend space itself. Living quarters with beds and furniture that could only fit human bodies. "This is just the beginning," Veltar said, his crystal form flickering with excitement. "We've found 46 other sites just like this one, all across this sector of space, all abandoned at the same time." Park Sola was taking pictures of everything, but her hands were shaking. Who could have built all this? And where did they go? "The really strange part," said another alien team member, a furry creature called Zex, "is that we're finding genetic traces in these ruins, DNA fragments that shouldn't exist." Kong Minho looked up from the star map he was studying. "What kind of genetic traces? Human DNA?" The silence that followed was broken only by the humming of ancient machines. Lee Junho sat heavily in the command chair, which adjusted itself perfectly to his body. Everything about this place felt wrong, yet somehow right at the same time. "Run the scans again," he said quietly. They spent the next 6 hours taking detailed measurements of everything. The results were always the same. Human DNA in the walls, human-sized furniture, human-compatible technology, and an energy signature that somehow felt familiar, like a song they had heard before, but couldn't quite remember as they prepared to leave for the day. Park Sola made one more discovery. Hidden behind a panel she found by accident was a small chamber. Inside was a single object. A crystal tablet covered in the same strange symbols they had seen everywhere else, but at the bottom of the tablet, carved in simple letters, were words in an ancient human language. Until we return home. Kong Minho stared at the tablet until his eyes watered. Professor, what if we're not the first humans to reach the stars? What if we're not discovering anything new? What do you mean? What if we're just coming back? The three humans looked around the vast chamber filled with impossible technology that somehow felt like home. Outside, 45 other worlds waited with the same ruins, the same mysteries, the same questions that no one wanted to ask out loud, deep in the walls. Ancient systems continued their patient vigil, waiting for the day their builders would finally remember who they used to be. The galaxy held its breath, not knowing that the most powerful species in its history had just taken their first steps toward remembering the truth. Something was awakening, and it was bigger than any of them could imagine. 3 months had passed since the discovery on the dead world, and Dr. Kim Yuna couldn't sleep. Her laboratory on the space station buzzed with activity as she ran the same tests over and over. The results never changed, but she kept hoping she was wrong. Run sample 43 again, she told her assistant, Dr. Nam Soo-jin. That's the 5th time today, Nam Soo-jin replied. But she started the machine anyway. Kim Yuna had been studying the DNA of different alien species for years. It was routine work, mostly boring. But these new samples were different. Every single species they tested had the same strange patterns in their genetic code, patterns that shouldn't exist in nature. The results are ready, Nam Soo-jin announced. Kim Yuna looked at the screen and felt her stomach drop. There it was again. Hidden deep in the alien DNA were tiny pieces of genetic code that matched perfectly with human genes. Not similar, identical. This is impossible, she whispered. Humans have only been in space for 50 years. These species evolved millions of years ago. Nam Soo-jin frowned at the data. Maybe there's something wrong with our equipment. I've checked everything 10 times. The equipment is fine. Kim Yuna pulled up files from 17 different species. Look at this. Zephyrians, Korthoks, Manthari, even the gas-breathing Vortons. They all have the same human genetic markers. But that would mean, that someone changed their DNA on purpose. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Ambassador Choi Daeho was having the worst day of his career. He had been chosen to represent the Galactic Confederation when a new species made first contact. It should have been exciting. Instead, it was terrifying. The newcomers called themselves humans, and they came from a small blue planet called Earth. They seemed friendly enough, but something about them made all the alien ambassadors nervous. Their ship designs are very interesting, said his assistant, Park Jae-on, as they watched the human vessel dock with their station. Choi Daeho nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had seen those ship designs before. The smooth curves, the way the metal seemed to bend light, the soft humming of the engines. It all felt familiar. The human ambassador stepped out of the airlock. She was a tall woman with kind eyes, who introduced herself as Captain O. Miran. She seemed genuinely excited to meet them. This is such an honor, she said in perfect galactic standard. We've dreamed of this moment for so long. Welcome to the Confederation, Choi Daeho replied. But his voice sounded strange, even to himself, as Captain O'Moran spoke about Earth and human history. Choi Daeho found himself studying her face. There was something about the way humans looked that bothered him. Not in a bad way, but in a way that made his brain itch with half-remembered thoughts. Later that day, he called Dr. Kim Yuna. I need you to run a test for me, he said. I'm sending you genetic samples from the human delegation. More DNA analysis. I'm already drowning in work. Please. This is important. Kim Yuna agreed, but she wasn't happy about it. She had enough mysteries to solve, without adding more. But when the results came back 6 hours later, she nearly dropped her coffee cup. Nam Soo-jin, come here right now. Her assistant ran over, worried by the panic in Kim Yuna's voice. Look at this, Kim Yuna pointed at her screen. The human DNA contains the same base patterns that we found in all the alien species. But in humans, these patterns aren't hidden. They're everywhere. I don't understand. The genetic code that appears in tiny pieces in alien DNA. Humans have the complete version. It's like Kim Yuna paused, trying to think of the right words. It's like the aliens have copies of human genetic information, but humans have the original. Nam Sujin stared at the data. That's crazy. How could humans be the source of genetic patterns found in species that evolved millions of years before humans existed? I don't know, but I'm calling Ambassador Choi right now. When Kim Yuna explained her findings, Choi Daeho felt the universe shift around him. He had spent his whole life studying galactic history, but this changed everything. Are you absolutely certain? He asked. I've run the tests 20 times. Every alien species we've tested carries human genetic markers, but humans carry the complete genetic template that all the others seem to be based on. Choi Daeho hung up and stared out the window at the human ship. Captain O'Moran was still on the station, meeting with other ambassadors. She seemed so normal, so harmless. But if Kim Yuna was right, then humans weren't the newcomers everyone thought they were. He pulled up the reports from the archaeological dig on the dead world, the ruins that were built for humans, the technology that felt familiar, the DNA traces. That shouldn't exist. Park Jae-in, he called to his assistant. Get me everything we know about human mythology and ancient history. Everything. Sir, I think we've been looking at this backwards. What if humans aren't new to the galaxy? What if they're old? Older than any of us? As Park Jae-in hurried away, Choi Daeho continued, staring at the human ship. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrible thought was forming. What if every species in the galaxy was connected to humans? What if they were all, in some impossible way, human creations? The idea was too big to accept, but the evidence was piling up like stones in his chest. Dr. Song Min-jae had not slept in 3 days. His office was covered with DNA charts, genetic maps, and empty coffee cups. Every time he thought he understood what he was looking at, the data became more impossible. This can't be right, he muttered, running another comparison between human and alien genetic codes. His colleague, Dr. Nam Sujin, walked into the messy office, carrying more test results. The latest samples from the Vorthan delegation just came back. Same pattern as all the others. Song Min-jae looked at the new data and felt his hands shake. Every single species, Sujin, every one. They all carry fragments of human DNA, but humans have the complete version. But humans are the newest species in the galaxy. We just got here 50 years ago. What if we didn't just get here? What if we came back? Nam Sujin sat down hard in a chair. That's impossible. Human history only goes back a few thousand years. On Earth, does it? Song Min-jae pulled up a holographic display showing the genetic family tree he had been building. Look at this. If you trace back the genetic modifications in every alien species, they all point to the same source. One original template that was used to guide their evolution. The hologram showed dozens of species branching out from a single point, like the roots of a tree. At the center, glowing bright blue, was human DNA. We're not just related to them, Song Min-jae whispered. We're their parents. Meanwhile, on Earth, Professor Han Ji-woo was making discoveries that would have sounded crazy to anyone who hadn't seen the alien ruins. She had spent her career studying ancient human texts, but now she was reading them with completely different eyes. Listen to this, she told her research team as they gathered in her cluttered office. From the Mesopotamian epic of creation, in the time before time, the children of Earth walked among the stars, building cities of light on worlds without number. Her assistant, Lee Soo-yoon, looked confused. We always thought that was just mythology. What if it wasn't? Han Ji-woo pulled up more texts on her computer. The Sanskrit Puranas talk about humans flying between worlds in great ships. The Mayan Popol Vuh describes a time when humans fell from the sky cities and forgot their true names. Egyptian hieroglyphs mention the time of forgetting when the Starwalkers lost their way home. She showed them image after image of ancient texts, all telling similar stories. Humans reaching for the stars, great cities that spanned multiple worlds, and then disaster, something that wiped out the great civilization and left only scattered survivors on one small planet. Every ancient culture has these stories, Hanjuwu continued. We dismissed them as fantasy because humans had never been to space. But what if we had? What if we had been there long before any of the species we're meeting now? Li Suyun frowned. But where's the evidence? If humans had a space civilization, there should be ruins, artifacts, something. There are ruins. The archaeological teams have found dozens of sites across the galaxy, all built for humans. All abandoned at the same time, roughly 5 million years ago. The research team sat in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about human history was crumbling around them. Back on the space station, Ambassador Choi Dae-ho was having an emergency meeting with the Confederation Council. Representatives from 12 different species had gathered to discuss the growing evidence about humanity's true origins. The genetic data is clear, reported Dr. Kim Yuna, via holographic link. Every spacefaring species in the galaxy shows signs of artificial genetic modification. The modifications all follow the same pattern, and that pattern matches human DNA perfectly. The Zephyrian representative Veltar flickered with nervous energy. Are you suggesting that humans created us? Not created, Kim Yuna corrected, but guided, influenced, modified. Someone took the natural evolution of your species and improved it, made you smarter, stronger, more adaptable to space travel. Impossible, growled the Korthok delegate. My species evolved naturally over millions of years. Your species evolved. Dr. Song Min-jae joined the conversation from his lab, but not naturally. Someone was watching, guiding, making small changes to push your development in specific directions. The genetic markers are too precise to be accidental. Captain Omaran, representing humanity, looked overwhelmed. You're saying my people, our ancestors, were involved in the evolution of every species here. More than involved, Choi Dae-ho said quietly. Based on what we're finding in the ruins and the genetic evidence, ancient humans weren't just spacefaring. They were the dominant civilization in this galaxy. They seeded life, guided evolution, and built an empire that spanned multiple star systems. Then, what happened to them? Asked the Manthari representative. Han Ji-woo's voice came through the communication system from Earth. According to our ancient texts, there was a great catastrophe, something that destroyed the space civilization and wiped the memories of the survivors. The humans who remained on Earth forgot everything about their galactic empire. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every species represented in that room owed its intelligence, its ability to travel between stars, even its basic evolutionary path to ancient humans. They had spent millennia developing their own cultures and technologies, never knowing they were walking in the footsteps of their forgotten creators. So we're not meeting a new species, Veltar said slowly. We're meeting our ancestors. Captain Omiran looked around at all the alien faces staring at her. We're not your ancestors. We're just people trying to find our place in the universe. But you are, Choi, Dae-ho said gently. And now the question is, what happens next? The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Confederation had never seen a meeting like this. Representatives from 43 species sat in complete silence as Dr. Kim Yuna presented her final report. The evidence was spread across massive holographic displays that filled the room with blue light. The conclusion is undeniable, Kim Yuna said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was announcing. Humanity is the original elder species. Every civilization in this galaxy carries their genetic modifications, Ambassador Yangi Taimin, Earth's senior diplomatic representative, stared at the genetic family tree floating above the assembly, at its roots at a single species, Homo sapiens. From that central point, branches spread out to every known intelligent species in the galaxy. "This is impossible," whispered the Vorthan delegate, his gas-breathing apparatus hissing nervously. "Humans only achieved spaceflight 50 years ago." Dr. Song Minjae stepped forward. 50 years ago, humans rediscovered spaceflight. The evidence shows they originally mastered it over 5 million years ago. Captain O'Maran felt sick too, her stomach. As humanity's first interstellar explorer, she had dreamed of meeting advanced alien civilizations that could teach humans about the universe. Instead, she was learning that humans had once ruled that universe. "Show them the memory fragments," said Professor Han Ji-woo, via holographic link from Earth. Dr. Lee Junho activated another display. It showed brain scans from human volunteers who had spent time in the ancient ruins. When humans are exposed to the elder technology for extended periods, something strange happens. Dormant parts of their brains begin to activate. The brain scans showed neural pathways lighting up in patterns that shouldn't exist. Areas of the human mind that medical science had never understood were suddenly coming alive. "We call them genetic memories," Lee Junho continued. "Humans who work in the ruins start remembering things they never learned, languages they never studied, technologies they never invented." Captain O'Mearan thought about her own experiences in the ruins. She had felt strangely comfortable among the ancient machines, as if she knew how they worked without being taught. She had dismissed the feeling, but now it made terrifying sense. The catastrophe that ended the human empire also triggered a galaxy-wide memory wipe, explained Dr. Kang Min-ho. Whatever destroyed human civilization was so complete that it erased not just their technology, but their very memory of who they had been. The Zephyrian delegate, Veltar, flickered with confused energy. "But if humans created us, why don't we remember them?" "Because they didn't want you to," Han Ju answered from Earth. "Our ancient texts speak of the Great Forgetting, a deliberate wiping of memory to protect the created species from whatever destroyed their creators." Ambassador Shoi Daehu, who had been quiet throughout the presentation, finally stood up. "We've been living in the ruins of human civilization for millions of years. Every planet we colonized, every trade route we established, every piece of technology we developed, all of it built on the foundations they left behind." The silence that followed was broken by Park Sola, who was monitoring deep space communications. "Sirs, we're receiving priority signals from archaeological teams across the galaxy. They're reporting the same phenomenon everywhere. Human volunteers are activating dormant elder technology just by being near it." On the main display, reports flooded in from dozens of worlds. Ancient human facilities that had been dead for millions of years were powering up. Computer systems were coming online. Massive construction projects were resuming operation as if they had only been paused, not abandoned. "It's responding to us," Captain O'Maran said quietly. "The technology recognizes human genetic signatures." Dr. Nam Sujin, who had been analyzing the incoming data, looked pale. "The scale of what's activating? These aren't just buildings or machines. These are entire planetary management systems, terraforming networks, interstellar communication arrays." "How advanced were they?" asked the Manthuri representative, his fur standing on end with anxiety. Professor Han Ju pulled up a comparison chart. "Based on what we're seeing reactivate, the ancient human empire had technology that makes our current galactic civilization look like children playing with toys. They could reshape entire solar systems, communicate instantaneously across galactic distances, and manipulate space-time itself." The weight of this revelation settled on everyone in the room. Every species present had spent millennia believing they were among the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Now they discovered they were children playing in the ruins of their creator's empire. There's something else, Dr. Kim Yuna said reluctantly. The genetic modifications in alien species weren't random. They were designed with specific purposes. Enhanced intelligence for the perfect environmental adaptation for the cortex, natural space-traveling abilities for the vortons. You're saying we were designed? The Korthok delegate snarled. Not designed, guided. Your species evolved naturally, but ancient humans helped direct that evolution toward specific goals. You were meant to be their partners in managing the galaxy. Captain Omeron stood up slowly, feeling the weight of 5 million years of forgotten history pressing down on her shoulders. We never asked for this. We just wanted to explore the stars. But you are exploring them, Veltar said softly. You're coming home. The assembled delegates looked around at each other with new understanding. They weren't separate species who had developed independently. They were all part of one vast family, created and guided by the humans who had forgotten their own greatness. The question now, Ambassador Yang Taman said quietly, is what we do with this knowledge. Outside the station's windows, the stars seemed different somehow. Not distant lights in the darkness, but familiar landmarks in humanity's ancient domain. 6 months after the truth came out, the galaxy was not the same place. Captain Omeron stood on the observation deck of humanity's first restored Elder facility, watching alien ships arrive and depart from what had once been humanity's greatest spaceport. Some came seeking knowledge, others came seeking revenge. Another delegation from the Outer Rim systems reported her aide, Lieutenant Kim Hoonwoo. They want to declare independence from human oversight. Oh, Moran sighed. She had never wanted to oversee anyone. A year ago, she was just an explorer hoping to make first contact with friendly aliens. Now she was considered the leader of a species that had apparently created half the galaxy. Schedule the meeting for tomorrow, she said, right after the Zephyrian worship ceremony. That was another problem. Some alien species had started treating humans like gods. The Zephyrians had built shrines to honor their creator parents. The Manthari had begun following human ships around the galaxy like lost children. It made Omeron deeply uncomfortable. In his laboratory on Earth, Dr. Song Minjae was having problems of his own. Human volunteers who spent time in the ancient ruins were changing. Their dormant genetic sequences were activating faster than anyone expected, and the results were unsettling. Show me patient 17 again, he told his assistant. Dr. Park Jijin. The hologram showed a human woman named Lee Naong, who had worked in the ruins for 3 weeks. When she arrived, she was a normal engineer. Now, she could understand alien languages without translation, solve complex mathematical problems instantly. And worst of all, she had started having vivid dreams about worlds she had never seen. She says she remembers building the terraforming stations on Kepler 442, Park Yejin reported. She can describe the construction process in perfect detail, even though those stations were built 5 million years ago. Are they really memories, or just fantasies created by an overstimulated brain? We checked her descriptions against the archaeological records. Every detail is accurate. Song Minjae felt a chill run down his spine. If humans were really remembering their ancient lives, then they weren't just the descendants of the elder species. They were the elder species, slowly waking up from a 5 million year sleep. Meanwhile, on the Confederation capital world, Ambassador Choi Daeho was trying to prevent a war. The Korthok Empire had declared humans to be a threat that needed to be contained. Their war fleets were gathering at the edge of human space. You created us to be your servants, snarled General Korthok Vel through the communication screen. Now you expect us to bow down when you return. We never expected anything, Choi Daeho replied calmly. Most humans don't even want these responsibilities. Lies. Your people are reactivating weapon systems across the galaxy. Ancient human battle stations are coming online. You're preparing to reconquer everything you lost. Choi Daeho couldn't deny it. Human genetic signatures were indeed triggering automatic responses in elder technology. Massive defense platforms that had been dormant for millions of years were powering up whenever humans came near. It looked like preparation for war, even though no human had ordered it. The technology is responding on its own, he tried to explain. We're not controlling it. Then control your people. Keep them away from our worlds, or we will drive them away ourselves. The transmission ended, leaving Choi Daeho staring at a blank screen. He knew the Korthoks weren't the only ones planning military action. Several species had formed an alliance to contain the human threat. Before humanity could fully awaken to its ancient power, on Earth, Professor Han Jiwoo was making discoveries that might change everything. In a newly opened chamber beneath the pyramids, she had found something that made her hands shake, a complete record of what had destroyed the human empire. It wasn't war, she explained to the emergency council meeting via holographic link. It wasn't invasion or rebellion, it was choice. The ancient records showed that humanity had reached a point where their technology had become so advanced that they could reshape reality itself. But with that power came terrible responsibility. Every decision affected billions of created species across countless worlds. They were exhausted, Han Jiwoo continued. The records show that managing a galactic empire was crushing them, so they made a choice. They deliberately triggered the Great Forgetting, wiping their own memories and scattering themselves to a single world. They abandoned us on purpose, asked Captain Omiran. They set up automatic systems to guide the created species toward independence. The memory wipe was meant to give everyone a fresh start. Humans would forget their power, and the created species would develop their own cultures without feeling inferior to their makers. Dr. Kim Yuna, listening from her laboratory, felt pieces clicking into place. That's why the genetic modifications were so subtle. They weren't trying to control evolution permanently. They were giving each species the tools they needed to develop on their own. The revelations spread through human space like wildfire. Ancient humanity hadn't been conquered or destroyed. They had chosen to step back and let their created children grow up without parental interference. It was the ultimate act of love, from parents who knew their children needed space to become themselves. But now those children had grown up, and the parents were returning whether they wanted to or not. Some were happy for the reunion, others felt abandoned and angry. Still others feared being treated like children again, Captain. Oh, Moran looked out at the stars and realized that humanity faced an impossible choice. They could try to reclaim their ancient empire and risk war with their created children, or they could walk away again and let the galaxy develop without them. What would you do? She asked Lieutenant Kim Hoonwo. I don't know, Captain. How do you parent children who are already grown up? The question hung in the air like a prayer, waiting for an answer that might determine the future of every living being in the galaxy.